What's up everyone, welcome to the video. We are here breaking down the Daytona Duels Blue-Green Vacations 1 and 2 at Daytona International Speedway on Thursday, February 16th around 7 p.m. Eastern. We have two 60-lap races to set the order for the Daytona 500 on Sunday, which we have a Millie Maker this weekend over on DraftKings. So make sure you get in there and buy a couple lottery tickets and see if you can end up taking it down, because that's really all it's going to be. But I would not expect that exciting of a race, or races I should say, on Thursday night here. Just the duels are really kind of glorified qualifying for the most part. You could also call it a bit of a practice session for them, because they have not yet had a practice session, and qualifying ended around 10 p.m. on Wednesday. So if you're wondering why it looks so rough, the hair, the face might not be that pretty. Well, it's now 2 a.m. I've been running the model, all that fun stuff, because we have once again limited time. Now, fortunately enough for us, that will not be the case for the 500 on Sunday. We'll know the order by Thursday night, so we'll have all weekend to digest information, run the models, run the sims, and all that fun stuff. So I am looking forward to that. But really, what I'm saying here is don't expect a super exciting race. These guys are just trying to keep it clean and advance to Sunday. A couple guys do have to drive their way in. We had a few of the open cars, or two of them I should say, Jimmy Johnson and Travis Pastrana, race their way in on speed during qualifying, and there's two more spots left, and we'll kind of talk about the drivers that do have to race their way in later on. But yeah, just saying, not expecting too much excitement here, which I guess should kind of correspond with how you build your lineups. But anyway, if this is your first time here, what's up? My name is Chris Pennell. I break down NASCAR DFS each and every single week on this channel. You can also find me over on Stochastic doing some content for them as well. And you can always find me live on Sunday mornings breaking down the slate and answering any single question you guys or gals end up having. It's always a good time. I always appreciate the support. And last week, or I guess 2 weeks ago, for the Clash, guys killed it. I was not expecting that many people here, so if we can have another banger on Sunday, I would appreciate that. But not doing anything for the duels tonight, just not that important of a race, and I don't think there's going to be enough interest for me to warrant doing a live stream. So I'm sorry to disappoint the few of you that probably wanted to be there, but I'll be live on Sunday, and we can have a good time then. And if you do end up enjoying today's free content, the one thing I ask in return, if you can leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you are brand new, and feel free to leave a comment down below. Being nice, being mean, I don't really care either way, but I'd love to hear from you. And getting to the preview of this race, it's going to be the same exact thing for Duel 1 or 2. It's at the same track, same field size pretty much, same strategy. So for what I'm going to plan on doing for the duels, again, we are at Daytona, which for the 500, completely different strategy. We are majorly picking drivers that start in the rear, assuming there's going to be a lot of crashes, massive place differential upside, things like that. But for the duels, I'm fine with playing some drivers up front. Now, I never played the pole sitter. We have a long history of the pole sitter just not being optimal at the duels. Like, yes, they may stay up front for a little bit, but we tend to see them fade back because they are in the front row. They are locked in. They are the only drivers locked in. They cannot lose any spots for their starting spot on Sunday. So for Alex Bowman, he seems to be in the front row or on the pole for one of these duel races each and every single year. He does not win these duel races. Sometimes we'll just see him fall out of line and just ride around in the back. Or I believe one year he was a little bit aggressive and kind of finished in the middle of the pack. That might have been him or William Byron. I can't remember exactly. But unless they win the duel race, I don't really see this working out for them. So we have a history of this not working out. I am fine with fading the pole sitter once again. They're not going to project that well for me. And I'm willing to just side with other guys there. So for me, pole sitters are pretty much off the table. Now I will play guys starting second on back. I just don't think the pole sitter is worth it because they have absolutely nothing to race for. Now, guys in the middle of the pack or starting 2, 3, 4, for example, we only have 60 laps, and again, we're not going to be throwing out insanely crazy blocks or anything like that, or at least that's my hope. I don't want to see cars trash before the 500 starts, and I don't think the owners are going to want that as well. But I'm fine with just picking a couple drivers, one or two that you think can lead laps and win the duel race, and then others just kind of picking on finishing position and place differential for the most part. By place differential, I do not mean rostering the scrub drivers like BJ McLeod, Austin Hill, Connor Daly, Riley Herbst, just hoping for mass chaos, because that's something we can reserve for the 500. For the duel races, by place differential, I mean maybe like a Noah Gragson starting in 14th or Justin Haley in 15th. You know, those are drivers that do offer enough place differential upside, but are also good enough plate racers, like Justin Haley, for example, that can squeeze into the top 10. Like last year, we saw Chris Buescher have placed differential upside, and obviously he finished very well. And like I said, at the same time, I'm fine with rostering drivers starting closer to the front, unlike I would normally at the Daytona 500. I basically cross out the top 5. But in this race, for the second one, just guys that I have in front of my screen, I'm not playing Kyle Larson on the pole, but guys like Briscoe, Cindric, Kyle Busch, Chase Elliott, all starting inside the top 10, that's perfectly fine for me because this race is not going to have as much chaos. I say there's a decent chance one of those guys can lead a good chunk of this race and wins. And if that's going to be the case, they will be in the optimal lineup. And I think more than one of those guys can be in the optimal lineup as well because finishing position will be pretty important. So I know it's Daytona, but try to get the normal Daytona strategy, throw it out the window, and try to mix and match a little bit with the duels because they can be a little different. You know, this isn't going to be a fun race, like I said, and it's kind of hard to handicap, but I think we can do it in a decent way here if we have the right strategy. And moving on to the driver by driver breakdown portion here, I do have to mention a couple of things first. So first off, if you want to join the best NASCAR DFS community out there, which I know is easy to say, but I truly do believe that. I think a lot of people could back that up as we have an awesome community of people. Links down below in the description or the pinned comment. I do have a free Discord now, but obviously I am in the premium version a lot more. But if you ever do want to join the free one, links down below for that as well. But you can get access into the entire NASCAR model, the projections for all sites, even some of the prop sites like Prize Picks and Underdog, ownership projection, optimizer, and a lot more to it. Betting simulation scores for DFS, whatever it is, you name it, it's probably on there. There's a lot more than just what's on the screen here for the free preview over on YouTube. So if you want to join, links down below for that. And Patreon does not work like it used to. It used to be on the first of the month and when you sign up. It's just when you sign up now, and it's a 30-day recurring cycle. So I think it makes a lot more sense. So for those of you that were wanting to wait until March, you can just do it now and it's going to be no different. Anyway, let's get into the drivers here. And we'll start with the expensive range, 9K and up. We have Ross Chastain coming in at $10,000. We currently do not have FanDuel salaries. I'm recording this at 2:30 a.m. on Thursday, so I'm hoping FanDuel posts some contests, but it's going to be wait and see on that. But he qualified in 8th here. The odds are for the Daytona 500, but they're just on here for reference. But I am fine with Ross Chastain. I'm not sure if he's going to be as high owned as a guy like Joey Logano or say Ryan Blaney because they start a little bit closer to the front. They are cheaper, and they're just known for being really good at a track like Daytona as far as dominating. Team Penske, you know, I've always been a sucker for Team Penske at all the super speedways, but Ross Chastain was good at the supers last year. And we can pull up track history, although it can be a bit noisy just because we don't have a ton of data to work with, but we do have a 6-race sample size from last season at the super speedways. And this is actually just a 6-race sample size of the last Daytona races, which are kind of skewed for Chastain because he wasn't poor equipment, so it's not really something I want to look at too much. But the past 10 races super speedways, which does go back a couple of seasons, he has a win, 4 top 5s, 5 top 10s. Like, he's a good plate racer. He won at Talladega last year. Starting in 8th, I think he's a fine play. Now, my projections are pretty close on a lot of these drivers just because it can be Daytona is always a bit of a random track, and there's only like 20 spots here, so these guys can't be projected too much further away from one or the other. But Ross is a fine play. I have nothing against him, although as of right now, I do think Logano and Blaney have better chances to lead laps. Now, fast laps are always a bit random here at Daytona, so the dominator points aren't going to add up as quickly. But I still think right now I have them ranked a little bit below Logano and Blaney because I do think those two guys can win this race better than anybody here. Ross is a fine play, but I think I might have more Joey and Blaney. Bubba Wallace, $9,700. He is starting in 6th. I think everyone knows he is great at super speedways. Daytona specifically, he is very good here. If you look at the past 6 races at Daytona, he's got the most DraftKings points per race of this group, the best average finish, 3 top 5s. You know, lap sled and fast laps they can be a bit finicky at these track types, but he's a good plate racer. I played him at a duel a long time ago, and he won me a good chunk of change. I think I almost took down a tournament playing Bubba Wallace, but that was in the Petty days when he was in the 43 car. But starting in 6, he's a very similar play to Ross Chastain. I assume he'll have lower ownership than Ross, so if you're just looking for the tournament pivot there, I don't mind Bubba. He'll probably end up being the lowest owned guy of this group, to be honest. And then going down to the 2 Penske cars, Joey Logano and Ryan Blaney, I am basically viewing them as the same exact play. Now, playing both can be a bit risky, you know, 2 drivers inside the top 4 at Daytona, but the dual races can kind of nullify that. I would not be surprised if they finish 1-2 in this race. We know they're more than likely going to be working together, and they're probably the 2 strongest cars in this field. I know Bowman had a super strong car in qualifying, but since he's on the pole, I assume he's going to fade back at some point. So Logano and Blaney would be my 2 picks to win this dual race. I believe it's just a duel, so I don't mind showing you guys a couple of freebies here. But yeah, as far as projected finish, I have Blaney finishing 1st in this race and Logano finishing 3rd, and William Byron's kind of right in between that Penske sandwich. But yeah, I definitely think Blaney and Logano are the 2 favorites here, and be willing to have at least one in the majority of my lineups, but 2 might be pushing it. If you do play 2, they're pretty much going to have to finish 1-2, which is certainly possible. And then dropping down to the 8K range, we have William Byron at $8,900. Now, I probably wouldn't play all 3 of these guys together. I think you're starting to go a little bit overboard. But 1 to 2, I think, is fine. I think there's a strong chance one of these 3 drivers ends up dominating and winning this race. So I try to split my exposure kind of evenly on that. I know Byron can kind of get caught up in wrecks a lot in these Daytona races, but that can be just kind of put to bad luck. He's not a bad super speedway driver in the slightest. He has a win at Daytona. I know he's averaging negative 4.6 DraftKings points per race here, an average finish barely inside the top 30. But when he's not wrecking, William Byron's very good at super speedways. We know he's dominated at Atlanta, which, you know, it's kind of an odd super speedway since they just redid the entire Atlanta track. But I'm fine with Byron here. His teammate Alex Bowman's on the front row, and if they can work together, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Byron got out front and dominated at some point. Then we have some PD plays here, finally. Austin Dillon at $8,700. I think he's one of the better plays in the slate here, starting in 17th. And like I said in the kind of strategy portion of this, to not chase place differential just because they're in the very back. But that does not count guys like Dylan Stenhouse-Jones. These are all drivers that had the potential to finish inside the top 10 here. I'm more so talking about Ty Dillon starting in 20th. I think that's a fine play. If he was starting like 30th at the Daytona 500, yeah, I'd play a lot of Ty Dillon. But for this dual race, I don't really see too much upside for a guy like Ty Dillon, Chandler Smith, Zane Smith, Cody Ware, for example. But Dylan Stenhouse-Jones, which does reflect on their price points, I think are all pretty solid plays here. You can kind of throw them under a blanket. Projection-wise, I believe the actual projections, I want to say it's Dylan Stenhouse-Jones is how it's priced. But all 3 are fine plays. I try to jam them in as much as I can possibly. Now, I think I ran some of the projections a little bit ago, and yeah, as you can see, yeah, Austin Dillon sitting at 34, Stenhouse at 33, and Eric Jones at 31. So they are projecting out pretty well for me, and they're going to pop in a lot of my lineups. Dropping down to the 7K range, we have Christopher Bell at $7,900. He's starting at 11th, and he's kind of in that weird range where he doesn't offer a ton of place differential. He's also not up front either, so I'm not really sure if I'm expecting him to dominate. So I'm assuming the ownership is going to be a little bit low. Now, he is a big name, and he's below 8K, so that might put the ownership up a little bit, but he's still in that dead zone where he's not really offering you much either way, whether it's dominator points or, you know, race winning upside or place differential. And I wouldn't say he's some elite super speedway driver. I mean, the past 10 races at them hasn't been too great for him. He runs well, 14.7 running position, but an average finish outside the top 20 and only one top 15 to show for it. So I'm not super excited about Bell. He's a fine tournament play if you're building multiple lineups, but if you're doing a single entry, I'm probably not getting to him. Kevin Harvick at $7,700. He's starting in 9th. I think he's a fine play, but he kind of goes in that same category as Christopher Bell, where he's not really offering much either way, whether it be place differential or race winning upside. I mean, I think he's got the potential to run up front here, and he's not been bad at Daytona. 2 top 5s the past 6 races. In super speedways, he actually has one of the better average running positions in the field the past 10 races. So I'm okay with Harvick. He's been a good finisher, but he's just one of those guys you throw in if more so as like a last piece fit, or if you're just trying to get away from some chalk, like AJ Allmendinger starting in 16th. The place differential there will garner some ownership, but I don't mind that pivot to Harvick because I think there's a better chance of Harvick finishing inside the top 5 than I do AJ Allmendinger finishing in, say, like the top 8. So I'm okay with that because, yeah, like I said, finishing position is going to be pretty important here because it's not like there's a ton of place differential to go around because it's only half the field in these races. Alex Bowman starting in the pole. It's going to be a fade for me. I will not go that route. Chris Buescher, $6,900. He was a gem in the last dual race last year. Starting in 7th, though, a little bit harder to get to him. We know the RFK cars, him and Brad Keselowski, should have some speed for Daytona, but for where he's starting, he's not going to project that well. And honestly, I'd rather just get to Michael McDowell, who's a little bit cheaper than him. He's interesting for a tournament play if you're building 20 to 150 laps. If I'm doing a single entry or 3 max, I'm probably just not going to get the Chris Buescher here. Michael McDowell, $6,600. I think he's a fine tournament play, starting in 13th. I think I actually have him projected higher than Kevin Harvick and Christopher Bell. I'd like to double check that here. I don't normally show the projections, but since it's just the dual race, I don't mind doing it for reference. So I actually have McDowell slightly above Christopher Bell. Harvick, he's a couple points higher, giving him a little bit more projected finish there. But yeah, I think Michael McDowell's a fine play for tournaments, and the price point's not that bad at $6,600. Because after Michael McDowell, we're kind of getting into an ugly range here. Ty Gibbs, we know he's in the 54 car this year, and there's certainly upside, but starting mid-pack for the dual race, he's just one of those guys where if you're building multiple lineups, I'm fine getting to him, but it's nothing special. Ty Dillon starting in 20th. He's now in the Spire car, no longer in the 13 or even the 42 from last season. So it's definitely a bit of a downgrade. I'm not expecting Ty Dillon to show a ton of speed here. I think he's just going to ride around the back. He's already locked in, so probably just be a guy that we play a lot for the Daytona 500, but not much for the dual race. Dropping down to the 5K range, we have Jimmy Johnson, $5,800. Really cool to see him get in on speed. So at least we don't have to worry about him qualifying for this race. He's starting in 12th. I don't love playing Jimmy here because we already know he's locked in, and I don't think he's going to want to risk doing anything to the car. So I think he's just going to take it easy here and starting in 12th. There's really not that much upside anyway, so probably just going to pass on Jimmy. Harrison Burton at $5,600. He's starting in 5th. It's a little bit high for me. We know he's kind of that 4th Penske car. Might be able to work with his teammates. I say teammates in quotation marks, Joey Logano, Ryan Blaney, because he's starting right up there with them. So if you're looking for a tournament play and you think Burton can kind of stay with him and finish in the top 6, that's not bad for his price point. You're just going to have to hope a guy like Michael McDowell doesn't do much, or Ty Gibbs or Ty Dillon isn't going to any place differential upside. But I don't hate the Burton call in tournaments. But projection-wise, it's not going to look good just because it's hard to project Harrison Burton to do well starting in 5th at Daytona. Then we have the two guys that need to race their way in, Zane Smith and Chandler Smith. Chandler Smith in the 13 couldn't even really get the car going to start the night. I feel like he's going to be the guy that ends up getting the boot, so I'm assuming Zane Smith is going to advance. But with him starting in 15th, there's just not that much upside, and I don't think it's going to take too much to be ahead of Chandler Smith here, so I'm not really going to be chasing either of these two race-in cars. And then we have Cody Ware starting in 19th. If you guys were watching qualifying, his car did not sound that hot going around the track. Again, just another guy that I think is going to be riding around the back. And while he has place differential, sure, I'll play him in the 500. I just don't think it's going to be worth it for this dual race. And moving on to the second dual race, do have to do a quick plug here just to pay the bills. I'm sure you understand. But two sponsors here, Prize Picks and the new one, Underdog, which I love their site, so I was super happy they've reached out to me. They do offer NASCAR props. Not assuming we're going to have anything for the dual races, but for the Daytona 500, we should be good to go for that. But on either site, you can use promo code CPEN and get an instant deposit match bonus up to $100. There's no strings attached. It's free money. Use it to your advantage. They run promos all the time. And speaking of taking advantage, Prize Picks had some really bad lines during the Clash, which if you were watching the live stream, we all kind of hit those. And yeah, some pretty bad lines there. So hopefully they keep being inefficient to the beginning portion of the season, because I definitely think we will have a nice edge there. And I do have Prize Picks projections on the spreadsheet as well. But anyway, getting into these drivers here, we'll start up top with Denny Hamlin, $10,000, arguably one of the best super speedway racers of all time. He has multiple Daytona 500 wins. This has been a very good track for him. Last year, kind of had some bad variance at the super speedways. Years prior, was not crashing. That just goes to show you how much variance there can be at tracks like this. But starting in 13th, I'm expecting him to be the most popular play on the slate. And projection-wise, he looks the best for me. So yeah, Hamlin, if you're playing cash games, I'd probably lock him in. And if you're playing single attorneys, can be pretty high owned, but for good reason. I mean, one of the best plate racers, starting in 13th, offers place differential upside, and honestly could win this race. I wouldn't be too surprised about it. Chase Elliott, $9,800. He's the guy I have projected to win this race. He's starting in 7th. And just once again, not going to offer a ton of place differential upside compared to Denny Hamlin, starting about half the spots further up. But he's also not like on the pole or even in the top 5. So he does offer a little bit of place differential upside. And again, would not be surprised if he won this race. I'll be playing Chase Elliott here. Just one of the best plate racers in NASCAR. If you're looking at Daytona, 4 top 10s the past 6 races, 2 top 5s, and some of the numbers that Denny Hamlin just not quite as dominant, but over the past couple of seasons has been very good. Kyle Busch, $9,600. If you are not playing Elliott, I don't mind the pivot to Kyle Busch. I think he's going to be really good in this 8 car this season. And while I know that doesn't really have too much to do with Daytona's been a bad luck track for Kyle Busch. He typically runs very well at the plate races, but just ends up getting caught up in the wrecks. So for a track where I'm not, or a race I should say, where I'm not really expecting too much carnage since it's just the duels, I think targeting Kyle Busch here is not a bad look. I think he could potentially dominate and win this race. Put it right there with Chase Elliott. If you're not playing one, I would honestly probably play the other. Tyler Reddick at $9,300. He's starting in 10th. New look this year in the 45 car. Has the Monster Energy car, which I thought looked pretty good on him in qualifying. Another driver that just has a ton of bad luck at Daytona. I don't think he's the greatest plate racer out there. Looking at his numbers at Daytona, not very good. Even the running positions is barely inside the top 20. Does have a top 5 and 2 top 10s, but man, average finish of 21.2. And if you're looking at the past 10 races for him at super speedways, average finish of 24th, 9.2 DraftKings points per race, 3 top 10s and only 3 top 20s. Hasn't been too pretty for Tyler Reddick. He can be a bit of an aggressive driver. I remember he threw that one bad block his rookie year on Kyle Busch in the summer Daytona race, and it just started the chaos, which was a calm race up to that point. But Reddick's fine starting in 10th, but I still think I would prefer Kyle Busch, Chase Elliott compared to him, but he's a fine guy just to fill in. Brad Keselowski starting us off in the 8K range. He's starting in 9th. I would prefer Brad over Tyler Reddick here. I know he starts one spot further up, but I trust Brad a little bit more at super speedways than I do Tyler Reddick, even though he can be a bit sporadic. But again, I'm not expecting carnage in this race per se. I know the finishes haven't been there for Keselowski a lot of the times, but we know he can be a dominant super speedway driver. So I don't mind going with him starting in 9th. I do think the ownership will be kind of high on Brad. Austin Cindric, $8,600. He's starting in 4th. Kind of throw him in the same boat as Chase Elliott, Kyle Busch, where good plate racer. I know we've only seen one season from him, but he did win this race last year, not the dual race, but the Daytona 500. And he's a Penske car, but he's not going to have his teammates with him because even Harrison Burton's in that one. So he's kind of like just all alone here, which I'd say probably will work against him a bit. But we know he's a strong plate racer. He can work his way to the front. Starting in 4th, could work with the other Ford Chase Briscoe. I think that's certainly possible. You also have Eric Almirola up there in the front row as well, which could help him out. But he's a fine tournament play just because he's got the upside to win this, but I'm not going to be super heavy on him. Justin Haley, $8,300. He's starting in 15th. He is a very good plate racer. I think projection-wise, he's going to look pretty good, so people will jam him in. Because we haven't really talked about a place differential guy yet besides Denny Hamlin, and even then, he's starting in 13th, so it's not like there's a ton of upside there to gain a lot of spots. But I think Haley will be decently popular here in 15, just for people that need to mix in a place differential driver, and it's not like we're breaking the bank. Chase Briscoe, $8,100. He's starting in 3rd, kind of in the same boat as Austin Cindric, although he does have his teammate Eric Almirola right up front there with him starting in 2nd. So if I had to pick between Briscoe or Cindric, it's going to be very close. I think projection-wise, it's going to be Cindric just edging him out just because he's got a better history at the plate tracks. But honestly, they're interchangeable for the most part, but both are very risky plays starting inside the top 4. Dropping down to the 7K range, we have Ryan Preece at $7,000. He's starting in 8th, and yeah, nice surprise during the clash. He got up front, was dominating for a bit. He's definitely a huge upgrade over Cole Custer. I know Daytona is going to kind of nullify the talent level a little bit, but I'm expecting some decent things out of that 41 car this year. But starting in 8th, he's a tournament play only. I think the ownership is going to be a little bit low on Preece, deservedly so, probably because it's kind of a weird starting spot for a driver that's, he's not brand new to the Cup Series, but just brand new to this car, and casual players aren't going to want to click on his name, which I get. He's more so of a 20 max, 150 max kind of driver for this race. Kyle Larson's a complete fave for me on the poll. Now, I think it's absolutely insane. He's the favorite to win in Vegas for the Daytona 500. He's at plus 1,000. I just think that's absolutely wild for his track record at super speedways. Daniel Suarez, $7,400, starting in 6th. Just a rough play there. I'd probably prefer guys like Cindric and Briscoe compared to Daniel Suarez. Just absolute horrible luck at the super speedways. Like he cannot finish a race. It seems like he crashes out almost every single time. He's got 2 top 20s the past 5 races, average finish of around 25th. And even the past 10 races, the better numbers here are pretty much from Talladega. Daytona's just been an awful track for Daniel Suarez. So starting in 6th, again, 20 to 150 max. I hate to rule out any driver in such a small field in a weird race, but I just can't see myself having too much Suarez. Eric Almirola starting in 2nd. He did win a dual race recently. I believe was that last year when he won the dual race? Either way, he's starting so close to the front. If he can get out ahead of Kyle Larson, lead some laps, sure it can work out, but he's pretty much going to have to win the race or finish top 2 at his price point. So it's an uphill battle for Almirola. Probably won't have much of him, and if I'm playing a single entry, I'm not going to play him. Martin Truex Jr. below 7K, starting at 11th. I don't think it's a bad play at all. He was actually pretty good at the super speedways last year. Didn't really have the greatest track record at them, but kind of righted the ship, and that's just goes to show how the variance can be. I mean, you can be horrible one year at the super speedways and then be one of the best finish-wise the next year. But at this price point, it's just too low for Truex, a guy that I think will be running in the top 10 here. So I'll be taking a low price point on Truex. Austin Hill in the 62 car here for Beard Motorsports, pretty much an RCR car. I think he's going to get in over Connor Daly. I don't think it's a hot take or anything. I mean, Connor Daly is driving a absolutely awful car, the 50 car, which I know is showing up 5 here for some reason. I'm not sure why, but the money team just absolute junk. They couldn't even get a lap down because they had said he had like a 1 in a million something with his oil or whatever it was. So I'm assuming Austin Hill gets in. I don't think it's going to be much of a challenge versus Connor Daly. So I'm not sure how much he's going to push it, but as long as he just doesn't absolutely blow up or hit the wall, he should get in over Connor Daly. Corey LaJoie, $6,300. He's starting in 20th. Not sure how much he's going to push it either. He's already locked in, and he's just one of my favorite plays in DFS every single super speedway because typically he'd ride around the back and just get his top 15, top 20. I remember at Atlanta, though, he was just running up front with Chase Elliott, and he was obviously the best play for a long time, and then Elliott just put him into the wall and wasn't the prettiest ending. But LaJoie starting in 20th, I don't think it's the worst place differential play. I mean, it's not my favorite because, again, I just don't think there's going to be too much motivation to do too much for LaJoie. But if you're in a pinch and you're just a place differential guy who might gain a spot or two, I don't think he's a bad play, but I think Noah Gragson probably has more upside for this race. $6,100 starting in 14th for Legacy Motor Club. I think there's some not decent top 10 upside, but I would say it's more likely Gragson finishes inside the top 10 than Corey LaJoie has finishing inside the top 15. So take that for what you will, and he's a little bit cheaper. So I'd like his upside better for tournaments. Dropping down to the 5K range, Todd Gillen, $5,100 starting in 17th. Probably going to finish around here. Don't really see too much upside. Although we do know front row typically runs well at tracks like this. But again, I'm not expecting too much. Riley Herbst in the 15 car. And folks know David Reagan this year. Daytona Go, Super Speedway Go just for DFS purposes. But, he's a talented driver. But again, 19th, I don't expect much improvement. Travis Pastrana is already locked in. And he has like no experience in this car whatsoever. He's in a good ride. I mean, with 2311 Racing, it's not like he's in a junk box or anything, and that's why he's starting 12th in this race because he wasn't that slow. But I just don't see the upside here because he's already locked in. He's not going to want to push it and damage the car, so we probably just try to see him ride around for the most part. So I think the upside is very limited. Connor Daly's in probably the worst car on the track. I mean, BJ McLeod doesn't ever have much speed, but at least he could get a lap down. So I'm probably not playing any Connor Daly and McLeod. Just really no upside here. But with that being said, that's all I got for you guys. Sorry it's a bit unorthodox, but it's just the dual races. It's kind of hard to break it down, so hopefully it wasn't that terrible. And if you did enjoy, make sure you leave a like down below. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet done so. If you want to join the community, links down below in the description and pinned comment for that as well. I wish you all the best of luck. I will see you probably on Friday night or Saturday morning for the Daytona 500 video, and then I'll see you on Sunday morning for the live stream, and I hope to see you all there. But I wish you all the best of luck. And yeah, I don't know what else to say.